Welcome to Word on the Street. I'm Shelly, your host, and we have a guest with me today.
Hello. My name is Chris Harris. Pronouns are he, him, his. I currently serve as the director for the Office for Multicultural Learning, Campus Climate and Belonging at Santa Clara University. And when we say the Office for Multicultural Learning, that also includes our Rainbow Resource Center. I am a 6'1" tall black man from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I have locks. Yeah, I've been currently living in Santa Clara since 2021, and my career has been all over the place. Some work in education, some work in nonprofit, a quick stint in state politics, but mostly all of my work has been centered around like people and caring for people and like in a servant kind of role.
Yeah, wait, that's so cool. Well, today, that's what our topic's going to be about, is behind the scenes in social justice work, working at this department for
3 years now,
3 years,
man.
yeah, both those 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot that kind of is unpacked through that process, and not things that you think about when you're working in social justice work. But yeah, that's kind of what the first thing is talking about. Like, let's talk about our department in the first place. So what does it mean to work at the OML and ROC, so the Office for Multicultural Learning and the Rainbow Resource Center, if people don't know the acronyms? But what is this work, and why do we provide these spaces? Like, what do you think towards that?
So more than anything, I think that's almost the question, right? Like what mechanisms do you have to make people feel comfortable? And I think a lot of times, and I think around social justice work or DEI or belonging or shared values or community or any kind of way that you want to look at it, the intent is to just allow people a very authentic space to just be themselves, right? Like, you don't have to mask, you don't have to put on a facade, you don't have to downplay any of your part, right? You don't have to change anything, you don't have to code switch. You ain't got to worry about walking around and being ridiculed for how you look or your body type or, your expression or anything. Like, you just literally show up as yourself. You walk in the door and be like, what's up? Can I learn? Can I work? Can I be in community? And then allowing other people to meet you there too. And that's what we kind of do in OML. We are the university's arm of multicultural programming and multicultural education. There are a bunch of other DEI, multicultural, cultural spaces on campus. Our MCC, which is our Multicultural Center, and that's like student clubs and student organizations. Then you have more specific places like DISC, which is Diversity Inclusion Student Center, and that's a little bit more focused on like STEM and students within College of Engineering and Arts and Sciences too, right? And then you have, you have our employee resource groups, and you have a bunch of other folks around here who are really intent on like doing things to help people feel like they can show up and be 100% themselves. Our lens is a little bit more expansive in OML and the RC. We serve the entire university ecosystem, right? So that's undergrad, grad students, staff, faculty. That means student orientation. That means, like Lunar New Year celebrations and Black History Month, podcasts and fashion shows and newsletters and amplifying things that are happening on campus. So we're kind of like a Swiss Army knife in a bunch of different ways to kind of just present people with the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to engage, and kick it and be fun and be in community. We're at a college, and so that's also interesting to kind of meet all of these people and bring all these people from international students to students who were raised here in the Bay. Folks who went to Bellarmine High School, which is right across the corner, to people who came from Michigan like me, and so we were here. We're this thriving community, and at the exact same time, it's a microcosm for society. Like, you have differences, you have religion and race and disability and all these other things. And in being a microcosm of society, it's like, okay, well, how do we, acknowledge history and oppression and power and privilege and all this other stuff? How do we tear down some of those walls? And then how do we educate so that people can learn, unlearn, relearn, challenge, critique, advocate, liberate, like all of the things with the sole and basic intention of allowing people to be their best and most true selves. And I think sometimes like politics and bias and guilt and shame gets in the way a lot of that. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But that's kind of like the basic approach that in my mind is how can we just make this place feel like home. I know that home isn't always safe, and I know home sometimes has different connotations for different folks. But in my mind, the idea of home is safety, is security, is I can walk around a house in my underwear and my t-shirt and feel like and I don't have to change anything. I can have conversations, I can listen to music, I can eat food, I can do all these things because this is your home. Y'all live here. Like, you moved from Washington, you know what I'm saying? Like, you came here, like, okay, well, how do I move and how do I manage in this place? So like as a student inclusion educator, does OML's mission kind of feel that way to you? Like, what do you think about OML and RSC and kind of how we serve or our purpose?
Honestly, I think that I agree with everything you've said and ways that the space is meant to be a space where you can authentically be yourself and know that you wouldn't have necessarily any negative judgment, but just either, if anything, challenges of pushing your own ideas and beliefs. And when engaging in these spaces, I think it's kind of like an emphasis that you don't have to be the majority culture to be accepted. You don't have to be the same as everybody else to be accepted, and that every part of difference is something to be celebrated of. I think of the OML and the RSC as a friend that always remembers your birthday or that date that it's super special to you, and these certain things and markers. It shows care, it shows compassion, but it's something that you also referenced is we're in multiple spaces. We're all throughout campus, but that really shows that all of these people are all through campus too. We all exist through different spaces, departments, time. Like, it's something that needs to be valued and cherished, and which I totally agree with. But as a student, I think a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to fully engage with our spaces in the physical space, but if they have interacted with us, they might have not known they've interacted with us.
I think most people don't know that they've interacted with us, and they have. Again, like we have touch points with every single incoming student, whether or not they know it or they have our Bronco Belonging modules. You have these virtual workshops and stuff that you have to do before you start. And then we've been present at in-person orientation since they revived it post-COVID. So we interact. Every single student gets our weekly newsletter from OML and the RSC. Whether or not they want to be on it, they get it. It's part of the university listserv. Sorry, that's a tech thing, So there are lots of ways that I think we are present, and also probably our biggest way is our end of the year multicultural recognition celebrations, and this is probably one of the signature things that we do, in that we celebrate the distinct cultures of students and our graduates right before. So we throw these celebrations with food and decorations and performers and student leadership awards and alumni speakers and all of these things that are crafted to affirm and celebrate our Native American, MENA, Lavender, Asian heritage, Black Pan-African, Latine, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities, and I think there's a bunch there, right? Because I think that a challenge to this work is that, and you mentioned majority, right? I think a challenge to this work is that a lot of times people don't see themselves in DEI or in multicultural. They're like, well, okay, that's for the black and the brown and the gays, and what I'm saying, like, and the marginalized identities. And I see and understand that, because I think you have to be intentional on creating spaces for those communities when they haven't historically existed, and you have to craft. You have to be intentional, like saying, like, we want to make sure that you feel like you're seen. So we want to, celebrate this or amplify this or kind of manufacture this. But like, belonging or community it's not all about one identity. It's not all race. It's not all gender. It's not all, again, religion or citizenship status. It's all of these things. It's just like, those are just pieces of you. And then, so I'm like, this is bigger than just one thing, like, you are included in this. When we talk about community, we talk about all of these things, like, they're open to everybody. We want people to know that while a lot of these marginalized identities have learned from the majority, like from the the, 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 the larger population, I guess, that, while a lot of these marginalized identities have learned from the majority, like from the there's this natural continued, like there's this exchange, you know what I'm saying? Like we learn, we are a part of it, but also like we encourage you to come and learn to be a part of it too, you know? And trying to like zoom out a little bit and encourage people to see more than it's like, I am included, like this does mean me, like, you know, for us to be in community, I have to be able to know who you are and your triggers or some of your content or some of your context to be able to be thoughtful and empathetic and in alignment with our shared values, which is the Jesuit values.
Yeah, I honestly, what came to mind is the way that you define community. I think often when we think of community, we think of kind of a homogenous one like culminating identity, but I really like that emphasis that community is meant to be a diverse a range of different ideas and different people, and that's why community can be hard, because there's so many things that challenge each other and we have to face at a constant basis. But if we can still exist with so much difference, then there's a place for all of us for sure. And so I really like that emphasis of like thinking about how community is looked at, and then how do we actually exist through our community.
Man, we do one of the bevy of, you know, services that we offer are workshops and trainings and stuff, and and so you know that you've always really shined in terms of like going out and teaching or holding space or encouraging people to come into spaces. And at some point, talking and discussing community over and over and over again, I was like, there's something deeper than that, right? Like so yes, we're all in community. Community is meant to be diverse and have all of these different ideas and experiences and everything else. But the thing for me that grounds community is a shared set of values. Like we have to have one thing in common. That one thing can be the school that we go to, right? It can be our Jesuit community. Your community can literally be your 2-block radius around your house. And so these people are my community. This is the shared thing that we have. Or you can say, my community, the thing that we all have shared is my team. You know what I'm saying? We're all in the same athletics team, so we are a community. Or we're all trans, and so like this is something that we have, and so this is the shared thing. The larger thing for me is, well, I heard this from a homie, and he was like, you know, community can also mean we are just trying to survive. That is what we have. So I don't like you. I don't agree with what you are doing. Whatever, but we got to figure out how we just gonna live day to day to day to day to day. And I was like, that's also real too, right? So when thinking about community, you have to figure out what is that shared system. What is the thing that everybody has? And for me, at Santa Clara, I automatically assume that everybody believes in our mission and our values. You don't have to come to Santa Clara, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you can choose any other institution. Maybe this is the only place that you got accepted to, and you still could have said no, but you came to Santa Clara because of our university and institutional values around Jesuit tradition, around serving people, around being in community with people. Like that is a thing that Santa Clara is ingrained in. That is who we are. And to me, I'm like, cool. If that's what you say is the thread that binds all of us, if this is the thing that community means to you and to me and to president and to the founding of this institution, then cool, let's go ahead and get it and center everything that we do around those values, which means holistic, which means thoughtful, which means serving impoverished communities and being in community with other people. And then that's kind of how I like try to check people, you know what I'm saying? Like and hold folks accountable is like, Don't look at me when I come and push back or say something like this. This isn't my position or my title. My position, my title is to point up here and say, like, we are in community. You ain't got to be a part of this community. You can go to any other place or you can go to no place. But being right here, we love and we care and we protect under these shared kind of roots. I mean, and so like I'd like to hear from you a little bit. Like when you came to Santa Clara, did you feel that sense of shared mission? Did you look at Santa Clara and say like, oh, I want to kind of come here? Or for you was the mission to go to college and to run?
I think I didn't actually know the emphasis of community as much, you know, when applying. Like I just remember doing applications, I remember submitting it, And I remember them talking about Jesuit values. I knew that they seemed passionate about social justice. And so I guess that is a little bit tailored toward community emphasis, because that's what social justice is. And that gravitated towards wanting to be here. I think it was a combination, the running, the people, the small classrooms. Being able to have a smaller classroom and really get to know your professor is a very much a gift. Yeah. It changes the perspective of which you see your education system. I think, especially with bigger universities, you kind of see your professor as just kind of like this person who lectures and then you just leave. But being able to really interact with them and see them as real people with very, very knowledgeable in what they do is just very inspiring, and also just makes you thrive to want to know more and learn more. But I don't know, I think at Santa Clara, as I got into the university and as I interacted with certain communities, I don't know if this is across all majors, because like I've heard a lot of interesting things about certain departments and their professors, but the ones that I'm a part of, like the philosophy and gender and sexuality, they're very community. They are very community. Yes. They believe in that. And this is a very small, that's a very much essence in each part of my department. And yeah, I just was able to find it. And that's why I'm really nervous to move on this next chapter, because I've found so much love and growth in Santa Clara and the community that I built here. It's just something that is irreplaceable. But yeah, I guess so. It took time. I think when I came here as a freshman, it did not feel like I had community, but I feel like that's how everybody feels, is they're trying to grasp for people. They're trying to make connections with people. They're trying to figure out what works. And I know every friend group that started is not a friend group currently. You know what I mean? It's just how it is. And now everybody's, hanging out with different people, but you all find community different phases of your life. And that even shows is even as you guys change as a person, you find new groups, new people.
And that's also a trip too, because I was very involved on campus. So I went to University of Michigan, Go Blue, and I graduated. And when I was on campus, I was involved in our Black Student Union, and I was in this Black male organization, and I was an RA, and all these other things. And then graduating and leaving, I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? What is my community now? Is it this group of my homies who I've now lived with? And so after I graduated, we moved to Houston, and it was a group of closely, it was a group of 4 of us, but then there are some other friends who we went to school with who also are moving to Houston. So we knew probably around 10 people in the city that we were with a year or two before. So then that became our community under that shared thing of we are all recent alum and we don't know anything about this place. So that became the community. But then after a while, I was like, all right, well, let me get involved. Do I find a church? Do I find an NAACP or an urban league? Or do I find a basketball rec group? Or do I, you know what I'm saying? Do I go do community service? I was looking for that community once I left, because I would just go to work and then go home, and now being 24, 25, 26, it was searching for what am I connected to, and so I don't know. I'm curious to know what people do. How do y'all find community? Here, and even thinking towards as you get ready to leave, what does what does social justice work look like to you? How does it look outside of college and outside of institutions? And do you how do you feel about moving into a post undergrad world where all of these things are still important, but it's not as tailored and curated and presented to you?
I think when I think of how I formulated community in the first place was just being a part of the OML actually was a big one. Just being able to work and be in these spaces more often really made me more emphasis. So sometimes I feel for me it's always been hard, because I've been more reserved in finding community. It just kind of comes towards me in a way that sometimes I interact with one person and then they show me this, or they, part of a team I joined, but then that starts to have to be your community. So I think those are some things that I've been thinking about. But yeah, you're really, focal pointing on this point that I've been concerned of. I was oh my gosh, I'm graduating, I'm losing this Santa Clara community. But 2 things. One, I shout out the Alumni Association, because they're there's Broncos everywhere. And low-key, that did actually make me feel a little better. And then it was the fact that I mentioned to you, my professor, Kimberly Crenshaw, not Crenshaw. I was you... I don't know why. I caught Crenshaw in my head. Yeah, I met Crenshaw. Oh my God, that actually would have been so cool.
That is so. But she's at USC, right? Or one of I can't remember which California school Kimberly Crenshaw's at.
Oh, she's in California, I think.
Mhm.
Like UCLA.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe UCLA.
Oh my gosh, no. Kimberly Dill.
Okay.
Which is my professor for philosophy, and she, like I was telling you, she like said that community is within yourself, and that you don't need to find it. It's just like you can actually create it yourself. And I don't know, there's just something super empowering about that. Thinking about mutual aid, thinking about how we have the ability to create change as an individual. I think often when we think about change, we think about these activist groups, we think about all these people, and it's a culmination of impact, those people who are involved, but it's also a single person who started it, and it's a single person who made that catalytic change to transform the community around them. And so knowing that we have that power and knowing that we have the ability to make these changes makes it, you'll find it anywhere because you are it. And I don't know, that's just like a good sentiment thinking about. And so when I'm going back home, like I'm thinking about how am I going to find them, like, reach out connections, like you're saying, and finding groups and connecting. And social justice work is not just a physical labor. It's not just, working a job or doing these things. It's how you carry yourself throughout your life and how you, call out people and call in people in conversations, how you interact with literally a person in a grocery store. It's your embodiment is how social justice needs to be replicated.
That is such a good point, and something that I like. And you know me, right? Like I'll talk to a wall. Like, I try to befriend and homie, and do all of that stuff. But there is an exchange in just like passing, and there are opportunities for you to see people. I don't think people want too much out of this world. You know what I'm saying? Like they want to be happy, they want to be joyful. But even in order to be happy and joyful, I think most of the time they just need to be seen.
Yeah. And
they acknowledged and something, right? And I think that is the baseline for everything else that we talk about: social justice, DEI, advocacy, liberation, revolution, all of these things. It's like, see me. Don't question my existence. Don't question my lived experience. I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to. Why don't you believe me? When I say something to you, when I tell you this thing, why don't you just believe me and then help me? And that goes all the way down to, like you said, just seeing people in the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? Like saying hello. Even, my dad is an OG, man. And so I remember being young and going to the corner store with him and walking out and seeing unhoused folks, which was somewhat common, I guess, in where I came from. Grand Rapids, Michigan, shout out 616. But he would always show love. Like always show love, like, what up, how you doing, man, good to see you, how you know what I'm saying, just like simple things. And I think social justice is that it's you see people, you acknowledge them, you give them space, you let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
Even if I don't have anything to offer you, like I ain't got no money on me, sorry, I'm broke, or I do, but I'm not giving you none. I mean, but at the very least, like I see you, I hope you have a good day, man.
Yeah, no, that's real, because I feel like often that we're kind of tailored toward seeing like houseless individuals, making them invisible. That's when the system's working.
Yes.
They don't want you to look at them. They don't want you to acknowledge them. They don't want you to see them as people, because that makes it too real. And that makes it too real to even look at, how did you get here for the first place? It's an individual, pick you up your bootstraps, no, it's like, no, it's what did the system do to you? And so, there's a culmination of things. But yeah, I feel like that's really powerful, just thinking about like acknowledgement is super, super moving. Acknowledgement, I see you, I hear you, and just bringing presence to that.
Yeah, and it's funny because we so our OML sits. It's not on the main part of campus. It's a house that's converted into an office, and so we have like a couple other departments that are next to us, and then we have some other student homes that are next to us as well. So it's like a cute little block. And our neighbors on the block, like shout out to men's rugby team, they're a fun, rowdy bunch, like and I think sometimes it's been interesting to kind of be in community. It's been interesting to be in community because we're an office with professional staff. We're there and doing work from 8 to 5, and they're living. They're just like going to class and having, like studying and being in their homes, and do all this stuff, and that's great. And I think sometimes there has been historical contention because of just like some differences, like in terms of like music or visibility or people feeling like there's a difference between us and them. And I don't think that that's held across the board from staff or from anybody, but it's just knowing that like we live next door to a bunch of white boys in college, and they're enjoying and they're living and they're being themselves, and they deserve to be that. They are owed that. And it was important to me specifically and purposely to make sure that I was like saying what's up, like you gonna see me, how you doing, like I see you, how you doing, man, like in just everyday conversation here and there. And I don't fully know what the relationship has been like before me or anything like that, but I would like to think that seeing one another in that way and acknowledging has been helpful for our coexistence as neighbors in terms of like honoring and understanding like noise and feedback and solo cups, like in yard stuff, and to making sure that again, like we see you, we understand you, and this is how we build community right here. This is social justice work in action. Every single day is like we are here, and this is the thing that we share. We share this fence, and we share sound, and we share space, and we share all these things. And so, like, how can we make sure that we both are there together at the same place at the same time?
Yeah. That's funny because I feel like it's like analogy in itself, like the DEI department with these college sportsmen who are playing drinking games and running games. And you're like, I'm going to have space for this, but we also got to acknowledge, like, we are right next to you.
So Wednesday afternoon, fellas, like, I got a Zoom meeting. I got to turn my camera towards me. But, like, and I think things like that, right, just to kind of, like, help people see the humanity in one another. And that's what social justice work is. That's what DEI work is. It's just honoring and understanding and acknowledging the shared humanity.
Yeah, I see that. I guess I wanted to tailor toward, like, working in these spaces for the first time, like what was kind of going through your head, and how did you think about it? How did your perspective change? What was that for you?
This is a longer story, but I mean, so right out of undergrad, I started working in higher ed doing recruitment, like undergrad recruitment. And then from there, I did a year of service with AmeriCorps Vista, working at a nonprofit in Ann Arbor, and working with high school students on like civic leadership and multicultural development and leadership development and stuff like that. And so at that point, like my mind had already been focused and intent on developing people and developing youth more specifically. Before that, in college, I worked at the National Student Leadership Conference, shout out NSLC, and so I'd done several years of that. So again, like I had already positioned myself to be like, okay, I care about youth, I care about multicultural work or identity work and education. And so I kind of started piecing stuff together from there. But it wasn't until years later, after I became a public school teacher, I taught kindergarten and it's still hilarious. Like the further I get away from it, the funnier it sounds, but I was a kindergarten teacher for 8 years. I taught in Houston, I taught in Nashville, I taught in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I taught in Portage, Michigan. And, some of those spaces were all black and brown kids, right? Black, Latina, Arabic, Egyptian, Somali, and Ethiopian, like just, like very much marginalized identities. And so for us, for the 6 years out of the 8 that I taught, it was like the thing that we are all doing and centering here is we all poor and black and brown, and we're all trying to do better for ourselves. So social justice work at that time wasn't really social justice work. It was more just like education because of the environment that I was in. In 2021, I transitioned out of the classroom and I became the DEI coordinator for our school district. And this was the first time that the school district had created this position. and it also was the first time that I was in a white district. I was in a suburban district. We had just moved. I had moved from teaching in Kalamazoo to teaching in Portage. And Portage at the time was, I think, maybe like 68%, maybe 72% self-identifying white. And then so you got 28 to 32% of black, brown, international folks. And that, and moving out of the classroom into a brand new DEI role during COVID, post George Floyd, or in the middle of all of that kind of stuff, 2020, 2021, it was a wild whiplash and spin for me to feel like the work that I was doing, which a couple of months ago was very much celebrated. Like, I'm working with children in this classroom and we're talking about being in community. We're talking about sharing. We're talking about differences. We're reading books and we're learning things about the world around us, civics and social studies and all of this stuff. Like, okay, cool. So it's cool for me to talk to your kids about it. But then when I come and hold you accountable as a family or as a community member, as a staff or a faculty member, as an admin, then it's a problem. And then that's when I really realized that it's adults, it's guilt, it's shame, it's a lot of history and baggage that folks, because kids don't carry that. Like, a 6 or 7 year old doesn't have the same level of anxiety around talking around race or disability or gender or anything, right? They are sponges, they're curious, and so that was easy. But then dealing with the adults, I was like, you all are fucking headache, bro. Like, just people talking about critical race theory and all this stuff, and I was like, you don't even understand what we're trying to do. I'm not, and I understand that there can be a threat, especially when public education is tied to it, because you're talking around tax dollars and you're talking around governance and you're talking around impact and like all these things that have very big, tangible connections to it. And also, our goal is simple. Our goal is to just create people who can come into this building, staff members who can come into this building, parents who know their kids are going into this building and feeling like, my kid feels safe. Yeah. My kid feels comfortable. My kid's teacher is black, white, brown, like whatever, but they are loved and they are going to be better because of these conversations. And it was really interesting to kind of play around with like some of the politics, some of the silencing, and some of like the when folks just don't want to move, they're like the inaction, I guess. And then starting to see that, like, okay, well, social justice, DEI, belonging, all these other things are good and palatable and tasteful, but only until someone feels uncomfortable. And then that's when you start to get into like a I mean, like, shit, open up your phone, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think people still have very polarizing views. Polarizing views isn't a problem. People in communities should have different things. They should feel differently. They should challenge. They should, expose gaps and all the other things. And those differences shouldn't be enough to break the community, right? Like you sit, you listen, you learn, you understand, and then you say, I agree to disagree, right? Like, let's find an alternative to make sure that we can all still coexist. So, yeah, it was really interesting making that transition from classroom or for anything else into much more of a coordinated and specific because I felt like as soon as those letters got put up on my title, it put a target on my chest, you know what I'm saying? And it opened up a whole lot of opportunity for folks to question and to seek for validity through my work. And I was like, I'm not threatening you. I'm just trying to help people get the development that they need so that these kids can show up and get everything that they need, versus like inheriting your shame or your guilt or your power and privilege without seeing it.
Yeah, I feel like you're pointing out when there's like a big part of belonging is that people question it when you talk about others. And when you begin talking about others, it's like, if I acknowledge you, I get erased. And so it's just kind of this weird impact in a way that when we try to talk about community, when we try to talk about these experiences, people just feel just completely like, now you're telling me I don't belong, and you're telling me I'm not a part of this. But that's the whole point. Those are the people we're trying to call in right now. Like, you can sit your ass down, like, please. Like, I was just
I'm talking to you, Fred.
I know, like, come on, like, this is meant for you. And so I really hear that what you're talking about.
I mean, so my question to you, right, is like, how then do you bring in people who don't see themselves in it? Like, is that the job of social justice, to beat people over the head with it and say, like, we're talking to you? Or is it to just, like, open up a door and say, you can be inside this place or you can be outside?
I think there's a certain accountability you do give people, because as working in social justice, if you can acknowledge it, then you're completely, like, agreeing to it. So, like, there's a certain amount of, like, if you are being passive about it, you're also, like, supporting the system continually. And so there's a certain amount of, once you have the lenses and you've seen it and you understand it, there's a certain of action that you should be taking.
No better you do better.
Yeah, so honestly, I think it depends on the approach. It's so individualistic. It depends on the person and how receptive they are. Sometimes you can tell people these things and they won't take a single hint or take a single, your words mean nothing to them because their ideas are most important to them. And those are the people you can't get to, but that's the people who plant seeds in. And so you can start that conversation, you let it go. It's not your business anymore because you got to keep your peace, and you can go to the people who you know will be receptive, because there's a lot of people who are curious and there's a lot of people who are seeking to further their knowledge. And so why shouldn't we put more time?
So last night we had our first multicultural recognition celebration. This was for MENA, and so every year we bring this dude, a local performer, and he has like a couple of different instruments, and he's dope. Like I don't know his ethnic background. I want to say Syrian, but that could be incorrect. But he sings in Arabic, he sings in English, he sings in Spanish.
Oh yeah, that guy.
He's dope as George.
He's so good.
He was back.
Oh,
he was back last night. It was awesome. And so at the end of the celebration, he kind of just sat around and was still playing music. People were moving and leaving and getting food, and it was great. Anyways, there was a group of 3 guys that came in. And at this point, we're trying to just give away food to get folks up out of the room. And they came in, we're like, man, go ahead and get some food. To-go boxes over there. And they didn't even get food. They came in and they just sat down at a table and were listening to George. And then at some point I kind of came around and was talking to them, and they're like, we were just walking by and we heard the music and we were curious and we came in, and they didn't know anything about OML. They didn't even come to get the food. They didn't even know there was food in the room. They literally walked by, heard this guy singing in Arabic. They heard the instruments. They thought it was dope, and they was like, we're curious. And I was like, bing! This is it. This is exactly what we're trying to do, is call and invite people into space and allow for a seed. And then when you said plant a seed, I was like, that's exactly what I saw in action yesterday.
Wait, that's so cool.
Yeah.
There's something so wonderful about curiosity in the way that it just gives you a chance to seek your full potential and knowledge and seek your full curiosity. I don't know. Curiosity is connection. You know, curiosity is just a place to even want to evolve, and where you're looking. That's so cool that they came by and were just asking about it. That's what we need. That's what we need when we come to these spaces. And I don't know, it's just in general, I think it's really hard to see outside of ourselves through this work, because, you know, as we live our lives, like, on a daily basis, people are just, how do I pay my bills? How am I making my class? Am I going to get this assignment done? And I feel like there are these, you know, pressing issues, so it's hard to even have the energy to think about a lot of these things. And so I don't know, it's just, I think it's our jobs is to make it as mostly accessible as possible, and, you know, bring in the people we can and make people more educated in these spaces, because ultimately it will change their lives and the betterment, you know. I don't think anybody who said, I learned about social justice and it made me like so much worse of a person, like I don't know if that's a common theme.
Yeah. And I think even when we talk about social justice, I think that's still very broad, because in my mind, there's a whole spectrum of it. There's like exposure, there's, you know, components of education again, then you have like advocacy and you know, so again, multicultural learning, and then all the way up to like liberation and freedom and radicalization, right? Like, and you know, I am a black man in America, right? Like, you know, my father taught me about, like, my family, my village, my community. They all taught me about the fragility of black life and what it's like to live in this world. what it's like to live in America, you know, lessons from Muhammad Ali, lessons from Malcolm X, lessons from Bootsy Collins, lessons from Stevie Wonder, lessons from Audre Lorde, lessons from Maya Angelou. Like all of these things were like, there were books, there were albums, there was incense, there was all these things around me. So like it was very immediate for me to be able to understand the plight and the experience of Black Americans. And then for me, there's a very clear moment that was roughly around like George Floyd. I was like, burn all this shit to the ground, bro. Burn it to the ground. Start over, because I was angry, and I felt like liberation is you know, and not only that, but just more like revolution was more of my flavor. You know, like, and I think that was coming from a place of like hurt and grief, but that's still very much like I think a lot of my calling. So I think my wondering to you is like, where do you see this spectrum of exposure, community building, social justice, all the way up to like the system is broken and we have to fix it? Because some folks may not agree with all of that. So then how do you meet people at the midpoint?
First off, you know, you said anger. And anger, I, as a, you know, feminist theorist myself, anger is powerful and a catalyst for revolution. So, you know, I embrace that. I feel like that's, you could say all of these, you know, there's like a lot of negative connotation toward anger, but anger can manifest not from physical. It can manifest from even not being expressive about it. Anger is like a certain type of emotion, but also in your actions. And it doesn't have to be like violent either. And so I'm hearing that, I'm like, yes. But I think when it comes to differences, this is always the hardest part. I think nobody will agree, even like looking at, you know, feminist theorists and activists and socialists, they all don't know. They all have a certain approach. But that's personally, real. What I've seen to work the best is just exposure and bringing in storytelling. You know, at the end of the day, like, it's hard to like, okay, you see systematic oppression, we hear about it, whatever. But if you see the people who live it, you see the people who experience it, you can't ignore that. And those voices are the things that are going to make the change. And they have been. So people telling their story, people listening into their story, people engaging with the story, that's what makes the difference in this type of work. I think activism looks differently, of course, like we've said, and, you know, just living it through your life and you know, existing in spaces and how you interact with people is something that's important. And like, even in the back of your head thinking, I don't know their story, you know? And so, you know, bringing that human connection is the most important when I think about comes to activist work, because it just really, really grounds you, you know? When people hear about, you know, like queer stories they've never heard about before, they'll automatically have a connection. We all can find a certain amount of similarity in the differences. And the experience of rejection can look different amongst others, but we can understand what rejection is. And so, you know, I'm not saying like we can fully understand them who they are people, but we can get close enough that we can feel it. And so that's the most important, most important thing. But I kind of wanted to segue into kind of self-care, because I kind of think this is in this general kind of talking about how do we make revolutionary change.
You're going to challenge me in front of these folks? Self-care.
It's hard. I'm going to acknowledge it, because I feel like, especially in our society or culture, self-care is number 2. Like, you are praised upon if you do not have self-care in a way. Like, you just are, I got like 4 hours of sleep, huh? Like, it's like, that's concerning. You know? But reflecting on, you know, these difficulties, I wanted to follow up, but what are the ways do you do self-care, and how do you take off the load, especially when you're doing social justice work? I wanted to mention the Audre Lorde quote that says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation." And that is an act of political warfare. And, you know, this work has emotional toll, so I kind of want to hear what your thoughts are.
I am a father of 3. I'm a married father of 3. My oldest daughter just turned 18, which is a trip, and then 13 and 10. And I learned values of like hard work and hustle and grind from my family. My grandfather worked in a factory for 30-something years, retired. My grandmother, you know, worked as a like administrative assistant or secretary for a little bit, and she did some other stuff. Like my family hustled and grind and put things together. So in my mind growing up, it was like, I need to work hard to the bone, right? Like my grandfather has a story, or he only took off like 1 day of work out of his 30-something years, and he had like a fever of 102, and they sent him home. So, like in my mind, that was kind of like what it meant to be an adult and be a husband and a father and a provider, was to go out and work myself to the bone. And I quickly realized that was not it. It took me some years. It took me some time for me to have to listen to my body. Like my body would sit me down and be like, no, you are shut down. You are not okay. And my wife is much more emotionally, spiritually in tune, and she was like, you need to listen, right? You need to care for yourself. And so after years of trying to figure out the balance of like, can I be a great husband? Can I be a great father? And can I be a great worker? Because being a worker is a huge part of my identity. Sometimes I wonder if it's too much of my identity, you know what I'm saying? Like for me to really, and it's not to say like I'm taking away from the work, because my work is important, but also like to be able to have that balance. Like if I truly want to have a balance, can I do it when I'm giving so much of myself to this role or any other role, teacher, DEI officer, whatever. And so as of recently, the past couple of years, I have this practice on at least once a week, at least twice a week. I try to do it 3 times a week. I go out in the yard or in the garage. I will sit and meditate. I stretch and do yoga. I'll do some core. I'll do some stuff. It's a workout. It's a 7 o'clock workout in the morning, but it's my flavor. It's my pace. It's exactly what I need. Sometimes I listen to you got music. Sometimes I listen to the birds. One of my meditative practices is I try to find 3 different bird sounds and isolate them and listen. Like, this is a bird over here. This is the sound that they're making. This is their cadence. This is this bird over here. This is what the sound they're making. And that kind of like helps to center me a little bit. And that's something that is probably like a huge practice that has been really useful for me. Being comfortable with taking off time, trying to communicate things to folks around me. My wife is a professor at Santa Clara University, so she has a teaching schedule. She's a writer, so she travels a lot and does conferences and stuff like that. So like, okay, this is what I need for my family, right? So that self-care also looks like setting clear boundaries. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have to leave the office at this time. I have this pickup. I have this, so that I can not feel conflicted with all the things that I got. And if anything, I think self-care is just like mentally, physically, but it's also, it's occupationally. You know what I'm saying? Like making sure that you are clearly setting expectations for people around you so that you don't overburden yourself, and you can continue to just like do all the things. I mean, like, I'm a music head, so I always listen to exchange music with folks and kind of like, oh, this song is dope. I found this, this whatever. And so that's like self-care for me. Like I try to deep listen to stuff and things like that. I love walking. I love being out in nature. My birthday was a couple days ago, so we just went to Santa Cruz for a couple of hours, man. Turned 40, bro. It's a wild trip. But yeah, so just taking a couple of hours to do things that help me. So I'm trying to be more comfortable with like sitting in silence and being alone, because that's not something that I've had for most of my life, is for me to be by myself. And as my kids get older, as their needs change, I'm like, okay, maybe I can shift and go in a little bit more. And that's not something that's been easy, especially for a recovering people pleaser like me, is to kind of like look at others. But it's to be selfish a little bit sometimes and be like, this is what I think I need for myself.
Yeah, I like the aspect of self-care that you're emphasizing on, is kind of like self-obedience. To care for yourself is to put a responsibility for yourself in a way. Like, I'm going to take this time off. I am going to meditate. There's a certain amount of just like, you keep yourself accountability, even when you don't want to like maybe meditate for one day, but that might be the betterment for yourself, and you take those steps, and that's self-love in a way. Accountability for yourself.
Yeah, and self-love is interesting. I think self-love differs from self-care. In a couple of different ways. I think I have a huge immense of self-love, right? Like, and I know that people have varying relationships with themselves and their own history and their own trauma. I love myself. I think I'm dope. You know, I think I'm the hottest thing walking. I mean, but I think sometimes that doesn't translate to self-care. Though, like I don't take care of myself in the ways that I would do for other folks. Something that I've been trying to be more mindful of over the past couple of, like 2 years maybe, is talking to myself how I talk to other people. You and I have sat in my office during check-ins, and you know, like I'm listening and asking questions and challenging, trying to hold you accountable and uplifting you. And then sometimes, you know, and then someone put that mirror to me as like, well, why don't you have that exact same
mentality? Yeah.
You know, I was like, that's real. You know, that's real. That's really real. And so I'm trying to be more mindful of that.
Yeah, I honestly, I just think that this element of like self-love is kind of difficult, like when we engage in social justice stuff too, because we see so much of the hate that is, you know, can be emanated towards the community group and so many things. So I think there's a type of internal self of that makes it challenging. But yeah, I kind of like the breakdown too, because I think that can be experienced differently through different spaces and stuff like that. But I guess as we kind of go to the wrap of this podcast, what are ways that people can stay vigilant? I don't know why that didn't come out. Vigilant on social justice issues, and I don't know, what do you encourage people at this time, especially with the administration and the politically just a very high tensions? Like we're very divided right now in this place. So what are ways that we can really culminate and people kind of stay on it?
Yeah, it goes back to what I think you said earlier. Curiosity. Curiosity is really is so enlightening. It's such an opportunity. It's such a gift for you to be curious around something that is either within you or outside. Right?
Yeah.
You know, curiosity can allow you to critique and understand and again unlearn and relearn things even within yourself, but also curious around other things, just to, you know, learn more, to be compassionate, to be understanding, even if you don't get the answer that you're expecting or hoping for. You know, just being curious. And outside of that, I think that, again, as adults and as people who continue to grow, right, that there is a level of fear around offending. There is, you know, a hesitance to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing. I have misgendered folks. I have mispronounced names. I have held my own bigotry in my head, like my own misconceptions, my own stereotypes, my own prejudices around folks, mistrusting folks. Like, I mean, that I'm a human too, you know, and then being able to, like, my bad, I'm sorry, you know, like even having the humility, having the something in you to come back and try again. You know, like, ma'am, I'm really sorry. You know, like I'm going to try again. My bad. You know, didn't mean to offend you, but I understand that I did. How can I be a better, you know, person? Can you tell me a little bit more about, you know, like how you would like to do this, how you'd like to be recognized, or appreciated, or loved, or anything like that? And so I think that humility is also a big one too. That is something that is challenging because I don't think our society emphasizes humility. You know, I think you can look at other cultures and see like that is a big component of it. That's not the answer to social justice or advocacy, but I think that that's a big piece of it. Yeah,
there's a lot of courage when it comes to that, to verbally even say that you're wrong, and people don't want to be vulnerable. You know, it's hard for people to do that, and so I can totally see that. But I do agree, like, curiosity is going to make a world a better place if we continue to think and evaluate where we don't necessarily understand things fully. And so just, you know, embracing that. But I also really agree with the aspect of just, you know, we're human. Even people who do social justice work, even though we have a lot of knowledge, we do make mistakes, and we do need to self-check ourselves too sometimes, because you know, it's not like we know everything, we follow everything in the most perfect order. We're just more understanding of it in a different, we're always in the space, you know, but yeah, we all make that, we're all human in the end. It kind of reminds me of I think it was Bad Feminist Bell Hooks, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically talking about how she wrote this piece about feeling like she was a bad feminist because she listened to this music which degraded women, or supported blank this when doing this, and she was like, I'm a bad feminist, but I still believe in these foundational things. And so it's this like interesting dichotomy between, you know, existing in these spaces and having belief in those things, but also just being that human.
Whew, there's a whole nother podcast episode on hip hop and hip hop culture and music
Right?
culture and entertainment culture, and you know, feeling like you're a hypocrite. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, or listening to it and understanding it as art or anything else. But I completely understand and hear that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to finalize this podcast. And yeah, thank you for listening in. Thank you, Chris, for sitting down and engaging in this really thoughtful conversation. It was a good time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the invitation. I've been looking forward to doing a
Yes.
podcast. I'd listened to every single one.
Yes.
I'm like, this is so good. So thank you for the invitation. I truly and deeply appreciate it. And huge congrats to you as you get ready to graduate. I'm so happy and excited for you and proud and just grateful.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Share love, y'all.
Share love.